as you approach 30, I think that most of us want to try everything that we can try. And as a result, we have to kind of believe that we can do it. So we think we're good at a lot of things, and we have confidence in a lot of things to try. Now, it's entirely possible we don't have confidence when we're trying, but we're being encouraged by someone to do it. And so what we're doing is really trying on a lot of different hats. And so sometimes that can come across as, hey, you know it all, or you think that you know it all.
Welcome to the 4 Bars Podcast. I'm Ken Leith.
And I'm Patty Leith. We are your hosts for some compelling dialogue, encouraging our listeners to strengthen their connections
and build strong communities, lifting each other up and connecting in ways that matter.
We named the podcast 4 Bars as a reference to how hard we work to find a 4 Bars connection on our devices.
And we wondered what could happen with relationships if we worked as hard at connecting.
Let's find out.
Welcome back to 4 Bars Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Ken Leith.
And I'm Patty Leith, your co-host. We're excited to be back again today. We're going to kind of wrap up our series on generations. Ken, wasn't it a great experience to do the panel?
Yes, it was. For everyone here who's had a chance to see it, we hope you've really enjoyed it and gotten some out of that. It was an incredible experience with having 5 generations represented.
Yeah, everyone. The storytelling was so amazing. Like it was, every now and then you get this experience where you're in something really special and you just feel so blessed to be there. That's kind of how I felt about that experience and frankly, the conversations leading up to it.
It, from my personal perspective, I think you can share yours, but it really, for me, there were just multiple surreal moments and things that I expected that were really expanded upon with respect to, oh, yes, I was like this. And then someone else from a different generation says, well, we do that sometimes too.
Yeah.
And the commonalities, and then finding out where we were different sometimes, what was driving that? Was that a technology difference? Was that just life events differences? What it could have been for each of those folks. But they had those moments where you just really said, you can't script that, and they were incredible, all of them.
And if you're listening or watching for the first time and you have no idea what we're talking about, we had a distinct opportunity to do a panel of people spanning 5 generations at Blake Street House in Bentonville. Ken and I facilitated it. We had some of the best panelists tell their stories about what it's like to be inside of their generation. Our youngest panelist was 24. Our oldest panelist was 82. And we had an opportunity to hear their stories and really see the differences, but as Ken said, the commonalities. The coolest part was that we taped it for the podcast. So if you subscribe to 4 Bars or go to 4barspodcast.com, you'll find those episodes. They are the last 3 episodes to have dropped. And today will be just some commentary about the topic to sort of wrap up this concept of building community across generations. And Ken and I are super passionate about that.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll share on that is, for me, is I was struck by the fact that it was the transparency and the vulnerability that people shared. And I'll stress to everyone, whether you've seen it or not, these folks did not know each other prior to maybe one short 15-minute meeting before we had sat down and did the podcast with them. But what they shared was so different to expose their feelings, their thoughts, their fears, and some of the challenges they may experience, whether you are a Gen Z or a traditionalist. They all have some challenges based upon their age, and sometimes these judgments that can creep in based upon, well, this person might be older or younger. They either may not know enough, or maybe they're looked at as they're not as relevant anymore. But the fact is, they all had something incredibly positive and meaningful to share.
Yeah. So Edges, our company, has been doing work with our client organizations for many years in the area of helping generations communicate better together. So we've done a lot of that work, and over the years we've learned a lot about generational differences. And the podcast part 1, part 2, and part 3 of that panel experience really get at the different life experiences that people had who are in the category called Gen X, Gen Z, millennial, traditional, baby boomer, not in that order, but just the things that were going on in their lives from a current event standpoint, the challenges that they and their families had to confront when they were children, the technology access, all of these things are going to lead to these generational differences. But one of the things that we found through our work is that there are some things that are going to lead to these generational differences that have nothing to do with culture or current events or life experience. It just has to do with the fact that, hey, I'm in my 50s and you're in your 20s. Ooh, you're a young whippersnapper, right? People have been saying that since my dad was in his 40s. Mm-hmm. Rest his soul. He would be over 100 today. So I think that is something that we are also really passionate about, is helping people understand, how can I embrace these different generations, not because they're so different from me, but because they're just like I was when I was that age. So we've done a fair amount of anecdotal research in a project we call My Mother Hates My Music. And I think that speaks for itself as to why we call it. I think for all of time, moms have been telling kids to turn that down, because that is just sort of the life stage that we're in.
Yes, and it's been going on probably since the dawn of time.
Yeah.
With respect to that. And for example, we've, over the years with our business, we've had C-level folks talk to us about, well, this group, for example, millennials, they want to work on their own terms. They don't work as hard. Those were fallacies, number one. They were just needing to be motivated. Different. Every generation needs to have some different motivations with respect to things. The other thing about some of the times when we have these conversations with business leaders, it's, well, they have these things where it's like, I don't know how to connect with them. And our conversation with them is to be able to help them show how to connect with them, but just as importantly, why it's important to connect with them. As we would share with them years ago with some of them, well, those are your next generation of leaders. And if you do not connect with them, you're going to have a hard time maintaining your workforce, getting the top of the top, no matter what their age is. And then ensuring that you have continuity within your organization. But if you do embrace them, what happens is what we've seen happen for many companies that we've been working with for years. Those people who are entering their workforce then are now in some of their leadership roles. Yeah. And they needed that to make that. And for the next however many years businesses are around, which will be forever, you need to ensure that you connect with those generations. Instead of complaining, we need to embrace them and figure out, and then bring them into what is where you have to accomplish.
It has been going on for ages, and as you said that, I'm wondering, what did that look like in the times of more primitive living? Did kids annoy their parents? I believe it's entirely possible that they did.
Yeah, likely. I'm sure that along the way, my parents may have said at times, I may have been a little bit annoying.
Yeah. I remember being told by a minister when I was probably 13 and I was complaining about how stupid my parents were. He assured me that they would get smarter by the time I hit 25.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily work that way, but okay.
So one of the things that we want to do, because we do utilize our research a lot when we're coaching, we want to share some thoughts with you about ways that you can develop in a towards positivity based on where you are in the stages of your life. Like, what does healthy development look like, and what happens if we get stuck in a particular stage and we don't work through it?
Absolutely.
So I think it really is just embracing the people of a different age are different for many reasons, but one of the reasons is because they're a different age. And it's entirely possible that I was very similar at that age. So let's take a look at, we're starting in the workplace age. So late teens, early 20s. As you approach 30, I think that most of us want to try everything that we can try. And as a result, we have to kind of believe that we can do it. So we think we're good at a lot of things, and we have confidence in a lot of things to try. Now, it's entirely possible we don't have confidence when we're trying, but we're being encouraged by someone to do it. And so what we're doing is really trying on a lot of different hats. And so sometimes that can come across as, hey, you know it all, or you think that you know it all. But in fact, in order to really figure out what we want to do, we do have to try a lot of things. I think it's helpful if when you're interacting with people around you that you share that you're trying a lot of different things. And if there's any vulnerability in your confidence level, you can share that too. But Ken, think about yourself in your 20s. Who were you?
Well, I'll share what I can on that one. No, in my 20s.
I've been told I wouldn't marry you if I knew you then. So there's that.
Yes. Many have told you that, I believe.
Many have told me that.
No, I think that for me in my 20s, especially, it was just, I think my early 20s, and then I segment my 20s a little bit there. There's a time where you're just in school and working, you're coming out of school. And for me also, I had a daughter at a young age in my 20s with respect to that. And, that was a great experience. But what it did for me, I think my life was a little bit different from others because, you get out of school and then, you get married and then you're having a child. It's like, oh, you have to grow up a little bit quicker sometimes there too, because now you're responsible for a human being.
Yes.
But still at the same time in the job market, for example, I found myself sometimes trying to overdo, and that led to some mistakes, honestly.
Yeah. So
with respect to that, where I was trying to exceed expectations for others, but also with the mindset that I wanted to jump ahead, and I wanted to be able to show that I could jump ahead. And then sometimes I had to really learn to sit back and learn more, and not take it as they were talking to me in a way that was condescending or anything, because it wasn't most of the time. It was just about sharing with me. One thing I will share with anyone who's doing, even when after I got married stuff, as a young person, I looked a lot younger for my age at that time. I also had long hair. Well, I can tell you there were people back then who would literally look at me and say, well, how could you be doing X job? I'll never forget my first managerial job. And I was like off proud of that. And I'd go out to see a customer and I knock on the door, and it was in a job where I was leading the customer experience. And there were some concerns there. So the customer wanted to speak to someone beyond my team. And I was still relatively new in the job, and the gentleman opens the door. And he says, who are you? And I explain, here, my name's Ken Leith, and I'm here to see you. Here you have a concern, so I'd like to review that with you and see if I can assist you. And he looks at me and he goes, well, if you're going to be able to help me, and I'll never forget this, then I could be CEO of your company, I guess. To which, as I think back about, I'm sure my face didn't say it at first.
That was My Mother Hates My Music.
Yeah.
You look too young to know what you're doing, and therefore you cannot do it.
Absolutely.
This is one of the reasons that in our 20s we have to believe that we can.
Yeah.
Because so many people don't.
So I had to think on my feet there a little bit and really quickly come around the fact that, well, sir, my company is assured that I am ready and I am empowered enough to be able to assist you in whatever that may be. And if there's something I can't do for you, I can reach back out to my company and to my boss.
Yeah.
So after that, he kind of said, okay, let's go in and talk and stuff. But it was just that very first experience. And I had several of them, as you might expect during that time. So not to be surprised, it wasn't probably too much longer after that, I cut my hair. Not because of that, but I really thought, okay, if I'm going to have some barriers put up just because of that, I don't want them to hold me back.
Well, I think confidence is critical in your 20s. And if it doesn't come naturally, surround yourself with people who help you build that up. I think discipline is also really important to have from a healthy development standpoint. If I think back on my 20-plus-year-old self, I was pretty scrappy. And I think that believing that you can is really, really important, not only in your 20s. And frankly, I'm gonna throw out the thought that we should all be feeling that way about life. But there is an optimism when you're just starting out in your career or in your adult life that is tempered with a bit of humor about how adulting isn't really all it's cracked up to be. But it is an optimism that is healthy to carry into future stages of life.
I agree. And you know this about me, and probably anyone who knows me well, even today, knows that I generally am a very confident individual, that I can figure things out. I can work through them one way or another. And I don't necessarily I'm not always capable of doing it myself. I sometimes do need to reach out for help. That was one of my biggest challenges when I was younger.
Okay.
Is not reaching out.
Really asking for help. And that sort of leads us to the 30s. I think by the time we hit our 30s, we have figured out what we're going to do in life, whether that's professionally or personally or some combination of the two. And by the time we are hitting our 30s, we're really kind of settling in to something that we have found out we're good at, we're passionate about, hopefully. And if not, you can probably keep looking. But we're also, if it's a career, we're also looking at a path to income when we're in our 30s. But one of the things that we begin to see in our 30s is there's a story, and for many of us, it's a bit of a harder story that we have to work through in order to set down the things that are barriers for us and really excel. So I always say that the 30s, if healthy development is happening, they are a time of personal exploration about your story, about your wiring, about the key things that make you who you are, and the things that are getting in the way that might have an origin that is more negative. Your story doesn't define your future, but it does create your strength.
So in our 30s, one of the things that occurs is that if after we go through our 20s, we've tasted a little bit of different things. Maybe we have tried different roles within the same company. Maybe we've shifted companies trying to go to something else. What it does is it allows us to start to formulate what are the things that I do day to day that I enjoy doing, and what are the things that I'm good at.
Yeah.
And then the next thing is, how do I get to do them all the time or in a manner that makes me happy and fulfilling.
Yeah. These are good choices. Now, I always say if you're in your 40s or 50s and you haven't made those choices yet, it's never too late. But in your 30s, really, it is a time where you can begin to dial in on these things that really are going to give you motivation and drive. Therefore, continue your optimism.
Absolutely. It's a good place to be where we start to really hone in on things that will set us up for the rest of our lives, so to speak, and get us in a position to where we can really say, this is where I'm going to be, this is what I'm going to do, and settle into that and grow those strengths.
Yeah. I think then as we move into our 40s, and again, it doesn't happen on your 40th birthday. I remember on my 40th birthday, I had a party. It doesn't happen on your 40th birthday. We sort of begin to settle into what we're doing, and we get deeper and more involved in that. If it's professional, we might move into a position of leadership or into a specialization. If it's personal, we might get more involved in community and civic organizations that our kids are a part of, and maybe it's both. But really in our 40s, we begin to see what our potential can really be. We start to see that, hey, 40 is not really old. It is a launch point into a future that's more amazing than I could really realize. That's why that optimism. But sometimes it's hard to see that. And in our 40s, many times we have an opportunity, and we should take advantage of. We have an opportunity to mentor others, whether that's professionally or personally. Oftentimes, that is where younger people than 40 often see 40, the experience that a 40-year-old brings to the table as something that can help them. A, great mentality for that younger person, but B, in your 40s, you should be seeking out ways to help lift up others.
Oh, yeah.
From a great, if I'm going to develop myself in really healthy ways throughout the decades.
Yeah. I kind of laugh now because I think back into my 20s, and I used to see people who were in their 40s, and I was like, wow, they've been around a long time. They're kind of getting up there now. And now I laugh about that.
Now I laugh about that too. But My Mother Hates My Music is really about helping us identify the things that are common because of how old we are, not because of the current events around us, but because of how old we are. To your point, when I was in my 20s, I thought 40-year-olds were, wow, that's really getting up there. And it's not, right? It's only just getting started.
Yes. The other thing about,
if you're in your 40s, you're probably watching us and going, yeah, you know nothing. But I'm telling you, it really is. We're a little older than that. It's just getting started on awesome. You're just getting started on awesome.
yeah, and we could talk about a topic at a different time, but it's as much mental as it is physical when it comes to how we age.
Yeah.
It's not just our chronological age. We kind of look at people and say, wow, they are living this lifestyle or they're doing great. As a sidebar, yeah, we recently met a couple of gentlemen who were in their 80s who are both very vibrant. You talk about skiing, mountain biking, still teaching and mentoring. It's incredible. So society does have a place for everyone. I'll just sidebar that and come back to the 40s here.
Physical activity is one we should devote a whole episode to because you've got a great story there. But physical activity is so incredibly important. But in our 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, we do it for different reasons. Many of my friends know that I was a pretty serious runner for many years. I'm not now due to some knee problems, but in my 20s, I ran to compete. I soaked in every single event I could get and met as many people that I could in the space, and I ran to compete. And then in my 30s, I ran to eat because my metabolism was slowing down. And in my 40s, I ran for stress management. And then when I hit my 50s, I realized that running is so that I can keep moving.
Yes.
Right. And I think that movement is progressively important the older you get. And yet it's something that the young tend to seek out and then drop. So physical activity is a big part of healthy development, no matter what age you are. So
the interesting thing about that is it's not something new to the body if you've done it your whole life. It's just a lifestyle.
Yeah, it is.
At that point in time.
It is.
But I will say, for folks, and we'll hit on the 40s here one last time from my perspective, is if you're in your mid-30s at that time, you're generally, you've either had your first opportunity to supervise or manage and get a taste of that, what that's like. And as you get into your 40s, maybe it's a little bit later, you may still be doing that same thing. But generally by your mid-40s, a decision is made either by you or by the organization you may be in, which is, I want to lead people, manage people. I enjoy that as part of what I do, or I don't. And it's not for everyone, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Because you can be exceptional at your job, enjoy your job and love it, but not have to, you could be an individual contributor.
And if you're watching or listening and you're about to turn 40 or you recently turned 40, I'm going to share a story. I was horrified when I turned 40. Little did I know that it was just the beginning. But I went to my neighbor's house, and she was a little older than me. She was the mother of the teenage girl who babysat for my son at the time. And she said to me, "The good news is you're only 40 for a year, and then it gets so much better." It's like, oh yeah. So once you can say the word, it's easier to embrace it.
Perspectives.
Yeah, perspectives. I think that healthy development as you get into your 50s is that we are now becoming experts at something. And we maintain relevance by pursuing ongoing learning. Our research has shown that in our 50s, and it doesn't, again, just happen on the birthday of the decade, but in our 50s, we have a choice. We can continue to learn and seek relevance and be all that we can be, or we can settle into the memories of what we've done. And frankly, that doesn't age well if you choose that second one. That's really how grumpy older people mentality is born. Staying relevant, pursuing learning, and looking more to the future. Being, again, that optimism that we have in our 20s, if we can just pull that, nourish it, into each decade, we develop so much better as we make it through the stages of our life. But when we can do this, we start to make a bigger impact. And I love coaching people who are there because it is so helpful to really explore how can you what can you seek to stay relevant? How can you not retire in place or not, relive the homecoming game from college or high school?
Yes.
And not only listen to music that you heard when you were 20.
For all the Springsteen fans out there, they do remember the song "Glory Days."
Yes, indeed.
But we should only hold on to it for so long. But I will say too, in the 50s, let me back up here. Basically, and there's plenty written on this from reliable sources such as Harvard Business or Medical or Cleveland Clinic. And within that, every 10 years, our body is continuing to move, and so is our brain. And there's study after study about, and it also depends upon, do we have any chronic illnesses at any age that impact that?
Yeah.
Or are we continuing to learn? Are we moving? Are we sedentary? What is it? But the same thing from a business standpoint and how we live and a personal standpoint is, are we still seeking to learn?
Mm-hmm.
Are we still seeking to try new things? And we've seen within some folks in their 50s, sometimes they've truly embraced that and they keep moving. And sometimes it is literally, I think this is comfortable. I'm just going to stay right here a little bit. And that's where it's a pivot point. And we see people who are even older than that now that we talk to who can even talk about, maybe I should have done things a little bit different then because I stopped doing some of the things I loved. Mm-hmm. I stopped doing some of the things that have now impacted me. So one of the things I would share with anyone viewing or listening is simply to, if you think as you grow and you're getting older, you don't have to stop anything at a certain age unless your body says you can't do a certain thing, for example. But then you can even adapt. And your mind, you can keep it going, because we find that people who pivot and trying to go sedentary and slow down and stop looking forward and look back and enjoy that, they tend to have some more challenges than those who don't.
Yeah. And I had, as you know, had to stop running in my 50s, but I then pivoted that to hiking and cycling and still kept going. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Adaptation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's often important. I think in your 50s, the important mindset, again, is learning, seeking new, optimism, optimism, to really be believing that it's not over. There's still a lot to do.
And I'll go back to the panel discussion we held. I learned in that discussion from people of every age within those 5 generations.
Yeah. So as people move into their 60s, one of the things that's really interesting is that there are a large number of studies that show that the majority of people make the greatest impact in their lives between the ages of 60 and 80. So if you think about being a grandparent, which often starts in this era, maybe a little younger, it's entirely possible it starts in the 40s or 50s. But when you think about that, that is making an impact on the next generation. But I also think that that really embracing yourself for the experts you have become and really figuring out, how can I do something that leaves a greater legacy is a great mindset to have as you enter into your 60s. It continues to be important to bring in optimism, to bring in learning and seeking, and expand your circles to get to know more people, to impact people more directly with what you know and what you've learned and the purpose and passion that you have for your life. So again, when we coach people at this stage, this is what healthy development looks like in your 60s and going into your 70s.
Now, it is true that there's great opportunity beyond a certain age. We are living to be older, across the globe, and so there's opportunity there to continue to move forward, things of that nature that will, in ways that will, as you said, make an impact, keep us happy as human beings, keep us healthy, and then be able to continue to contribute. Again, one gentleman who was on the panel who was 82, he is now teaching at a medical school the patient experience, the family experience. He's teaching that to young med students, and imagine that because he has a wealth of knowledge.
Yep.
He's now imparting that in a way that they can digest and take and accept. That's incredible.
I was so inspired by his story. It was amazing. As we round into 70s, many people are retiring at this point. Some retire earlier, 40s, 50s, but many are retiring in their 60s or 70s. And that doesn't mean we stop making impact. Again, this optimism, this willingness to embrace what we've learned and make ourselves teachers and inject ourselves into communities around us to be able to help lift them up with what we've learned and what we know, and continue learning like that, and continue believing in the positive impact that you can leave. It becomes incredibly important as you get into your 70s and beyond. And then I'm going to speak a little bit about just leaving your legacy. That's kind of 70s, 80s, and beyond.
Yeah. One thing about, when we get to, again, seeing people, and we've got some friends who are in their 70s and the 80s and things. And with that, there is the ability, as you said, continue to move forward, continue to contribute. There are these things that we can do, again, partly because we're living to be older, partly because it's exciting. People are they're moving around more than ever within the country, within the globe. People still want to travel. And it used to be, I can remember when I was a child, there was like a certain point in time, almost people didn't want to travel any great distances after a certain age. But now people, again, they're engaged, they're healthier lifestyles, they are connecting in to give back in one way or another, in a civic manner, whatever it may be, to their community. And we're finding that communities are starting to value the different generations much more than they did before. There are a lot of studies about it now out there. There's good work going on, for example, in developing intergenerational housing. So it's not segmenting different by age. It's, for example, there are some developers who are experimenting with putting housing, intergenerational housing, on college campuses or on the edge of them, near high schools. Why? Because it brings safety, it brings knowledge, it brings a perspective of more people around to help see what's going on, all these things there. They are building and developing now housing for cohabitating different generations, but not necessarily by family. And guess what? In some cases, the person who is maybe 60, 70, 80, who's maybe part of that household, is also able to impart and help with the child. If there's a family in there and they have a child, there's benefit there. Crime is lower where you have that component of that. And even just the community itself and the vibrancy of communities is raised by having these intergenerational interactions.
And you hit at a core theme that is so incredibly important at every stage of our life, and that is being a part of a community that we contribute to, that lifts us up, that helps us. It takes a village, right? So I think that's incredibly important when you look at Blue Zone research that shows the critical factors that exist in these communities where there are more people over the age of 100 than anywhere else in the world. Community is front and center. Movement, eating well, but community, lifting each other up, and really where young people communicate with older people in ways that don't ignore them but include them.
Yeah,
and the same. Both older people do the same.
Yeah.
So,
One of the things that, again, there are reports on that show this definitely happens, that as people age, and if they're not interacting or they are left to have no interaction with people, they have a greater they have a greater challenge of cognitive decline, because it's that human interaction that, again, connects the brain, and it allows us to keep moving our mind.
Yeah.
And that's that sense of belonging and well-being that also matters. It's not just, my thinking about things. It's that sense of well-being, the sense of being accepted, the sense of being part of something helps the brain to have the endorphins going and being able to ensure that, we're not going to prematurely have a cognitive decline. And that's on a rise in our country because we do isolate more.
Yes, and it's worse coming out of COVID.
In many countries.
Yes, we do. And it's worse coming out of COVID, I think.
Yes.
As we think about moving in from 70s into 80s and even beyond that, legacy is really the impact. But making sure that you intentionally remain a part of a community, intentionally challenge your thinking and your learning, enables you to grow, to be a person that leaves a legacy. And I think that's critically important. And I have been extremely inspired by several people over the age of 80 recently who are probably more fit than I am. So,
which is really a great thing to have out there.
I want to share a few facts that we have learned. The study published in New England Journal of Medicine found that you reach the top of your potential around age 60, and this continues well into your 80s. Another fact, potential can be reached on a personal, professional, and or spiritual level. And really, the whole person needs to embrace all of that.
Agreed.
Another fact, healthy aging includes community, healthy meals, and active lifestyle. We see that in the Blue Zone anecdotes and in the Blue Zone studies. And then the final thing I'll share is that Blue Zones who do have the most 100+ people have extremely strong intergenerational communities and connectivity. So I think these are things we've talked about, but also really backed up by research that not only is this good for you if you embrace that decade of your life in this way and you move to the next one with this mindset, but it helps everyone. So yeah.
Absolutely. So as we close out, a couple of things I will share is, number one, if you have any questions or just want to hear more, reach out to us. Go to 4 Bars Podcast, and you'll be able to connect with us through email, and we will get back to you and share any information, answer any questions you may have. The other thing is, as we are now entering into the holiday season, it's opportunity for all of us to think about, how can I connect with someone? Whether no one's connected with me or not, it doesn't matter. How can I connect with someone? And maybe they are my age, but also maybe they are a different age. And just remember, we all have something to value. We've had some of the most profound discussions in the last probably 6 months with people simply by including them, connecting with them, helping them meet someone else. So when you're out and about in your community, there's Christmas festivals starting to go as we're into Thanksgiving here coming up. And we've all recently, for example, had our tree lighting of our square and on decorations down there. That's happening across communities across the world.
Yes.
Take the opportunity to get out, meet someone new, talk to them, learn a little bit about them, engage with them, maybe even share your contact information with them and connect over coffee.
Yeah.
And you might be surprised at how good you feel, but also how it makes the other person feel.
We went to an event recently where we were challenged to meet somebody we didn't know and share something very vulnerable. And I had coffee with the individual. So it was really, really cool way to expand my community. So, and we're going to go for a hike, which is kind of cool. Yeah. And just a few things. If you enjoyed today, please share it with someone else and follow us at 4barspodcast.com. Subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And if you know of an individual or a company that might be interested in sponsoring future episodes, let us know. Reach out to us through the 4 Bars Podcast. As is generally the case, we will put up some resources related to what we talked about today in the website, and so you can check them out there. Thank you for joining. Have a great day and happy holidays.
Yes, indeed. Have a wonderful holiday.
The 4 Bars Podcast has been brought to you by Edges Inc., a growth advisory firm based in Bentonville, Arkansas. I founded the company in 2001.
Edges promotes growth of people, companies, and ideas. Our team collaboration tool, called Interface Methods, is a basis for teams to work together more collaboratively, understand each other, and accept differences and address challenges together.
We also started a nonprofit called Unform Your Bias. We teach kids and their adult influencers how to utilize storytelling as a means to reduce bias in the world. We hope you'll check us out, subscribe to our podcast, and look at our websites.